it's not desert. People think that this is a desert. Far from it. The Sinai is a desert. But as you move up into Palestine, you have the coastal plain, which is, as you'd expect, beaches, sand dunes and the like. Then as you move
Mediterranean holiday coast.
Absolutely. As you move slightly inland, and in and around Gaza City, lots of agriculture, lots of orchards, lots of cactus bushes that make movement quite difficult, similar to the bocage that the British faced in Normandy in 1944. But yes, a number of orchards, so fresh food is theoretically available. And wells. Now this is where the real difference comes about water. Water is the key, and that's one of the reasons why the Beersheba action happens on the 31st of October 1917, because the water, the supposed 7 wells, we don't get 7 in the end, are so important. Reading the reports of the men in the war diaries and the personal letters of the Palestine campaign, the lack of water comes through. Lack of water for men, lack of water for horses. Let's just talk about horses, if I may, briefly.
Yeah.
This time, 100 years ago, the Egyptian Expeditionary Force has 82,000 horses, donkeys and mules on its strength. It has 40,000 camels. Now a lot of those horses are carrying, and camels are carrying mounted men. Mounted riflemen, in terms of the Australian Light Horse, New Zealand mounted rifles or the British Yeomanry, some mounted infantry on the camels, but also stores. And carrying water. But of course the more water you carry, the harder it is, the heavier the weight. And so you end up almost creating conditions where you're only carrying water for yourself and not for others. And so water was a real problem throughout the campaign. I suspect that the heat was a problem, especially in the summer. That's why, to some extent, there's a pause between April 17 and the Second Battle of Gaza and October-November 1917 and the Third Battle of Gaza. It's also to build up forces, to build up that logistic support. That logistic support includes a railway that comes all the way up from Egypt, across the Sinai and into southern Palestine. It includes a water pipeline that comes up all the way from Egypt, up through into southern Palestine, and includes roads. Without those, we would not have been able to fight the Palestine campaign. No, there were railways. They had, I guess, internal lines of communication rather than external lines of communication. So they were closer to their supply base. They'd been there for longer. It had a certain permanence to it. They'd had a garrison in southern Palestine since 1914. They'd had a garrison before that, I suspect. I'm just showing my limited knowledge about pre-1914. So they had the opportunity to look after themselves a bit better. You mentioned roads in that area. Of course, there were a number of Roman roads in and around the area. Certainly the Jaffa to Jerusalem road was based on a Roman road. There are a number of reports, and again in letters home, saying if this is a Roman road, the Romans should hang their head in shame, because the Roman roads, I'm afraid, were not in very good condition.
That's 2,000 years later, isn't it?
Which I think is a wonderful story, that the Romans have got nothing to be proud of with if these roads are one of theirs. Okay, well, it's probably worth just thinking a bit about the men who were there first. The majority of the men who were fighting in Palestine were in divisions that were part of the territorial force. Now, I accept not all of them were in the territorial force pre-1914. Lots of the men will have joined up after war was declared. But the units were territorial force units, and the vast majority of those people who were fighting in Palestine 100 years ago today had fought either at Gallipoli or Salonika, or in one or two cases both. So quite a lot of them have been away for quite some time. So they're away from home. It took a lot longer for a letter to get to them, 10 days by boat. Whereas across the channel, whilst I accept that the numbers involved coming across the channel to the Western Front were much greater, it took longer to get messages in form of letter or parcels out to the Middle East. So straight away you've got that remoteness, that distance, that difference. Now I accept 100 years ago your average Frenchman or Belgian was very different in many ways because of their language and culture to your average Brit. They won't have met them before. But I think it's fair to say that your average Palestinian, whether he be a Jewish Palestinian or an Arab Palestinian, was exotic in that, to use the term in terms of different.
Yeah.
The Ottoman army were, I think it's fair to say, better than we gave them credit for. And if I was going to be really critical of the British across the Eastern Mediterranean and Middle East, it's that we've failed to learn how good an army the Ottoman army can be. The Ottomans did pretty well at Gallipoli. Yes, there were lots of other factors that came together that caused us not to be able to win the Gallipoli campaign. But, Ottoman performance was one of them. Mesopotamia. Yes, it was hot and dirty and disgusting, and there was lots of disease and illness and so on. But again, the Ottomans inflicted a number of defeats on us. And so again, the Ottomans were able to fight to a certain standard. And the first and second battles of Gaza, we perhaps underestimated, as I said already, at the second battle of Gaza, the ability of the Ottomans. We got it right at the third battle of Gaza. We had started to respect their capabilities more. And they didn't give up without a fight. As we moved towards Jerusalem, they put in a number of counterattacks. They had learnt the latest German tactics, and there are reports in December 17 up near Jerusalem of them using stormtrooper tactics. These are tactics that perhaps are not as obvious on the Western Front until 1918 and the Spring Offensive, but they are coming in late 1917. How come the Ottomans are using these stormtrooper tactics that the Germans do? Well, they're German-led. The man at the very top is Falkenhayn. Beneath him, you've got General Kress von Kressenstein, one of the corps commanders. Some divisional commanders are Ottoman, some are German. A number of the specialists, for example, the artillery have German commanders. The Air Force, the Ottoman Air Force, is predominantly German-led. But you have a number of German advisors, but predominantly, as I say, an Ottoman force who fight very, very well.